Welcome to another episode of the Grow My Clinic podcast. My name is Ben Lynch, and today we have a special guest. We have Ted Jedynak. So Ted specialized exclusively in musculoskeletal therapies for the lower limb since 1996. He created 3 Manual Therapies specialist clinics from 2002 to 2012. He sold all of those clinics in Australia in 2016, and he had actually retired from clinical practice since 2012 and has since focused on teaching manual therapies globally. As you'll find as soon as we kick off this episode, you'll realize that Ted was one of my early mentors, and I owe a lot of my development and growth to Ted's ability to teach. There are 3 things that really came out of this episode for me that you might find useful or interesting. Number 1 is Ted's humility, definitely at the very beginning, on reflection of his own business journey and sort of going out there naively, somewhat arrogantly, in his own words, and just getting started with no idea about business, no purpose, no structure, and making a lot of mistakes at the very beginning and throughout his career. He's certainly got the humility now. And he reflected on the importance of a quality mentor, someone in business, and their ability to ask the right question, the hard question, to challenge you on your business journey. So I loved his distinction of the importance of mentorship in business. The second point that I also got out of this recording was the importance and value of systems and structure in training and onboarding team members. He used the analogy of McDonald's, this billion-dollar business, is run by a bunch of teenagers, all because there's the power of systems and structure. And he references the E-Myth, which was instrumental in his own clinics. So having that system and structure is also a way to attract the right talent to your business and retain the right talent in the form of admin and practitioners. The third thing is really an extension of that training. I say in this episode that Ted is the best teacher and mentor that I've ever experienced or come across in my professional sporting career, academic career, personally and professionally, through one key reason. And he goes into some things that he's now found through his own exploration with his life partner and business partner, Lil, about how to be a quality mentor. Because if you've got a team, if you're going to grow your business, you need to be a quality mentor and teacher. If you're not able to distill the lessons and the systems to your team, well, they're not really going to thrive like you hope they would, or that they certainly could if you unlocked their potential. So I really love, as we go closer towards the end of the episode, Ted drills down into some simple things that he's found useful in bringing young practitioners or young admin to a higher level in a very condensed period of time. I hope you enjoy this. It's quite a detailed, in-depth conversation. It goes all left, right, center, up, down. It goes all places. Ted is quite the creative thinker, but we're able to navigate some real practical gold, and I hope you find it useful. We'll dive in.
This is the Grow My Clinic podcast by Clinic Mastery, where we help you deliver amazing client experiences to grow your clinic.
Ted, welcome to the episode. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for the invitation and thank you for the opportunity, Ben. Nice to be here.
Yeah. For those who are listening in, I think we owe them a bit of context. Ted is somewhat of the Mr. Miyagi in this story, and I am Daniel's son from Karate Kid. That's the best analogy that I could come up with.
I think I like it. Yeah, okay.
We even wear the same black T-shirt. I think many people comment on the black T-shirt in Clinic Mastery, and that has been where it's come from this guy, Ted. But for the many years, Ted has been a clinical and professional mentor of mine. I worked with him for Ted at the Foot and Leg Centre. And so he's got some great insights for us to dive into today. But Ted, could you give us a bit of context for how your business journey began? Like, where did it begin? How did it all unfold for you?
Probably I suppose the first thing that happened was a very healthy level of naivety, arrogance, and belief that I knew everything there was to know. Because I graduated and I must have been all of 20 years of age, and I thought, what else is there to know? I've got it all sorted out. So my very first business step came as a result of my next door neighbour who said, he was a pharmacist, and he said, I've got a spare room here. Do you want to set up clinic? I was like, sure. How hard can it be? Why not? And that had its own adventures that took place. And then I graduated in 82, and then it was in 84, I think. I did some locum work for an elderly podiatrist, and he was looking to sell his business. So then I thought, well, why not buy this established business and see what I can do with it to, help. It was the journey of setting up my own business from scratch and what it would require to build that versus investing in an established business and building on already an established client-based database. So they happened pretty early on in my career, and then it was, what was your question again?
Really, how did your business journey begin? I think that gives some good insight. You really took the plunge, like straight out of university. You just went straight into it.
In hindsight, I think it was a combination of arrogance and naivety. I didn't know what I didn't know. One of the great experiences that really made me stop and think took place when I had my very first paying customer in the clinic that I had painted and put in new floor coverings and got my old dentist chair from the South Australian government salvage auctions. And anyway, she came in, she paid cash, and it was all of $17 or whatever it was at the time. Gave her a receipt, and the next day she comes in and I'm there, I'm thinking, and she brings a friend, and I'm thinking, how good is this? She's already referring people. This is just, I really got this thing sorted out. And she said, look, I went into the health fund to claim, and apparently you're not recognised. And I went, well, what do you mean not recognised? She said, you don't have a provider number. I went, provider number? What's that? And literally had that is the level of where I started from business. I had no idea what a provider number was. So mad scramble with phone calls and trying to find out, because we certainly didn't get taught anything about business that I recall in our university training. So fair to say it was probably a pretty steep learning curve. I did, quickly rectified that, but it seemed like every other day I was having to rectify or do something that I just had little to no idea about. But one of the great experiences, and certainly as far as being a student went during my podiatry training, was also working part-time at McDonald's. And here we've got a multi-billion-dollar business that is pretty much got 90% of the employees teenagers who can't keep their bedroom tidy. So how does a business like that work with these teenagers? And that's when I first got an appreciation of what systems can mean to a business. But of course, healthcare and health industry, where you're dealing with people one-on-one in their personal situation, you can't have systems there, can you? Because, everyone's got to be treated as an individual. Another wake-up call. It's like, yes, you can have systems, and in fact, you already do have systems. They just might not be that well organised or considered when you're getting underway, or when you're operating as I was at the time, a single practice operation. So, that got me into stumbled across the E-Myth and Michael Gerber and his whole approach to systems and being, the three tiers of working in the business, working on the business. And in a very short period of time, I would have to say we made some quite significant and spectacular progress. So, and when I say short period of time, probably took about 20 years. So, it was one of those overnight successes that long time of learning opportunities along the way, which,
Good way to put it. So then, Ted, maybe we can cross over two domains here, which are the systems and the revelation of the importance of those, and then perhaps taking the action of implementing them. And your evolution in podiatry, especially the manual therapies. Maybe you could give some context as to how your journey evolved on the manual therapy side in podiatry, and then perhaps how it evolved with much more systems and structure around that.
Sure, yeah. One of the things that I was mindful of, a really important skill as a practitioner, is to listen. And what I noticed was if there was a consistent theme or something that my patients, my clients would be asking me, it came about particularly through orthotic therapy and the use of orthotic therapy in relation to treating MSK conditions of the lower limb. And what I noticed was that there was a lot of women, particularly corporate business women, a lot of people involved in activities like ballet or gymnastics, where orthotic therapy, just from a practical perspective, wasn't really a viable option. So a common question I would hear was, isn't there something else? And given that my training in podiatry was the late 70s and early 80s, frankly, there was nothing else. Things like dry needling or acupuncture services, these were considered, it's almost like heresy. Mainstream medicine definitely didn't have any time or appreciation of them. So I was alert and looking at alternative treatment options. One of the things I considered was rolfing. So it's not that well known, but it's kind of like a deep tissue fascial release, not massage, but really about getting into the structural elements of the body. And looked very closely. It was going to mean moving to Boulder, Colorado for an extended period of time, like literally years to develop the skills necessary. And really as a young married man and all that comes with those responsibilities, it wasn't something I was willing to undertake. And then a colleague was telling me about this DPM from the US, a podiatrist from the US, who had given up surgery, his surgical practice, to do this thing called foot mobilization. And I really didn't know what that was about, but he was making claims along the lines that 80% of his surgical cases he could now treat with this foot mobilization. And this is also in the early 90s, where the interweb is really not established as a resource that we could draw and say, well, what is this? And do our own research, such as it is on the internet and Dr. Google. So anyway, I went along to this training, and it was just like all of my professional lights started coming on. It's like, so is this what those chiropractors do, or the manipulative physiotherapists? And I thought, literally the doors opened. It's like, now I could do something else. And I had, again, a healthy level of naivety in that. Harvey Lampel, that was the name of the guy that did this training. He was a unique individual, but I could just see these opportunities, both clinically and business-wise. I thought this was, for me, and professionally, it was a complete game changer. So about 6 months after I did that training with Harvey, though, he actually passed on. So now I was on this path of thinking, this is the best thing since sliced bread. But now what do I do as far as really learning and skilling myself in this area? And so fortunately I had some physio and chiro mates who were willing to take me under their wing and help me with what they knew as far as manual therapy treatments went, but they were often dealing with other parts of the body, the spine and head, shoulder, neck. And they didn't know the feet like I knew the feet. And so then I spent a number of years just trying to marry what they would do from a manual therapy perspective to what I understood from a foot function biomechanics perspective, basically marrying those two together to deliver this foot mobilization therapies service. And I certainly had a lot of learning experiences along the way, because in the beginning it was foot mobilization would cure everything. It cured death, it cured divorce, it just cured everything. And then I gradually got to find out, it's like, oh yeah, there are some things called contraindications that maybe this is not such a good thing to do. But literally, because I had to work this out on my own and deal with my own psychoses as well, it probably took me longer than it would be close to, so it was 94, 95, and then got to about 2000, 2001, where I really thought, okay, now I've got this discipline reasonably well sorted out. And it was in 2001 that we made the commitment decision. We're going to set up a clinic that specialises exclusively in foot mobilisation manual therapies services. So yes, I'm a podiatrist, but this was going to be our sole focus, pun intended. So that's when the fun really started beginning, because then it was one of the things we were mindful of was I had a bit of a business event take place where I blurred the boundaries between friendship and business. And I had a chiro mate who literally was my best friend, and we got into business together, and then it just turned into a very spectacularly ugly divorce, and things fell apart, and I literally found myself out of his business. I had no access to any of the files, the client files, just nothing. I was literally out on the street. So that's when I really had another big wake-up call. It's that having a good mentor is just absolutely crucial. If there's one piece of advice that I could give to any listeners, is have a mentor. And in particular, what I realized was have a mentor who has walked the journey or gone down the path that you want to go down. And it was interesting that the mentor, I remember saying to Lil, my wife, after, another night of being curled up in the fetal position, crying, not wondering what the hell I was doing here in my life, and how was I going to get out of this mess? And I had this part-time consulting room set up, and this guy contacted me, a very well-respected, very successful businessman here in Adelaide, who happens to be in the flower business. And I went home that night, and I said to Lil, look, we know that I need a mentor. I've got just the perfect guy. I'm in the healthcare industry and he's in the flower industry. Of course it's an obvious match, isn't it? What I knew, though, was I needed a mentor in business, because this is the year 2000, 2001. This is just where I knew that was my biggest thing. I knew that I had the technical, clinical skills, but I had no idea as far as business went. So when I say, someone who has walked the path, he was a businessman who I knew that if I could do a quarter of what this guy was doing, then I was going to be classed as a spectacular, like all my needs would be met. So that's when I said to Lil, this is what I think I need to do. So then the next approach was, okay, well, I've got to approach this guy and say, hey, will you mentor me? And there's a lot of similarities with my wife, because it took 3 proposals before she finally said. And same with his mentor. It's like, well, it didn't take 3. It took 2 lunches and lots of expensive wine, expensive gifts. And it's like, come on! Finally, he was willing to take me on as a test case, certainly take me on as a case. And it was just, with no question, he helped me. The beauty of a good mentor, and I've certainly had several since then and still to this day, I have mentors because their ability to ask questions or see things from a perspective, it's almost like the expression, you can't see the wood for the trees. That is the power of a good mentor. They know the questions, they can see what's going on and see, they just see things that you are unable to see clearly. So that definitely was a turning point. And Yeah, look, we certainly enjoyed some good success. Winning the Telstra Business Award, where we have external judges come in and assess your business. And I remember their comments of what they saw was a healthcare business that provided a very high quality health services in an organised, systemised manner. And they said, yes, we can see that this could be perceived as, a systemised, almost like a production line service, but the client experience and the patient experience was uniquely individual, and people felt like they were being cared for as individuals. So that really, that was in 2004. So it was a great acknowledgement that what we were doing made good business sense, but it also made good customer service sense. So that's where things were at.
And Teddo, the thing is that I obviously had the privilege to work with the Foot and Leg Centre for many years and be mentored in a lot of those systems, all of them, not a lot of them, all of them. Was it a partial thing? I'm interested in that distinction that you made around systems in health and that perhaps friction that someone might experience as a clinic owner or even a clinic team in implementing them. One of the most common things that we get from the community here is, my team would never respond to that or receive that or be open to that. I'm interested in your experience. You've employed many people over the years. You've obviously coached and mentored many people over the years.
Yes.
A clinic owner that's sitting there going, systems, I've tried systems in my business before and they haven't worked.
Yes, it is, and you're right. The word systems can sometimes bring up those issues. There's a pretty simple solution, and what that is, and it's worked very effective for us, is if anyone's not willing to go along with the systems, then we just sack them.
It makes sense. As an extension of that, I'd say perhaps as well, what I found interesting is that the Foot and Leg Centre niched quite specifically, and that you started to really, perhaps my perspective is, attract a certain person as well that really understood or believed things before perhaps they even started working.
Yeah.
That's my perception. Do you believe that played a role in perhaps attracting that person? Because a lot of people say, I don't want to put myself in a box and say I'm only kind of serving this particular niche or demographic. I'll scare people away. But maybe it was an attraction tool for the people that join the Foot and Leg. That's my perspective. You can respond.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like the double-edged sword, isn't it? It's like you either attract people or ostracize people.
Yeah.
And it's certainly been our experience as well. The people who love us, they love us passionately, and those who don't hate us passionately. So you're right. One of the things, I guess from a recruiting perspective is we've done over the years a lot of teaching and training, both in workshops and in individual circumstances. And that's actually afforded us the ability to check out prospective staff and employees. And I'm not sure whether people would, certainly students, be aware of this, but at the time we essentially treated workshops like an interview. And in fact, I'll ask you from your perspective, did you think that when you attended your first foot mobilisation workshop, did it feel like an interview from your perspective?
I don't think it did. I mean, I felt that it was an incredible learning experience. And I know we'll go deep into the FMT side of things, but the level of nurturing and support and mentorship guidance for mine really stood out as like, bloody hell, if you're going to get this as a new graduate, young professional, no matter where you are in your career, this level of mentorship, which you touched on, I think that's something that health professionals really love and resonate with. Is we all attend CPD. We're all about growing. I certainly felt that. And I did my first FMT course when I was in my final year of podiatry. But it was an incredible learning experience and connection experience with the content, with yourself. I'm not sure if Lil was there, but certainly the entire group. there was an incredible connection there as well. So I see it as a perfect breeding ground and scouting ground for potential talent as well.
Yes, it was certainly that. And of course, the practitioners are one element of the business. Our GAs, our guiding angels, our support staff, also very important, if not more important than the technical side of things, because of their interaction with the marketplace and with our clients as once they became clients. And so that was also another reasonably steep learning curve. And again, from my Flower Power mentor, you put a job ad out and for a reception staff. You get literally hundreds of people applying. Yeah. Of course, everyone says they're the best, and all their references and CVs are all absolutely. How the hell do you work out sort the wheat from the chaff? And so we were very keen to adopt something which is not really standard practice, but the group interviews. And so we would have, groups of 15 or 20 of these reception candidates come in, and we would, kind of work the crowd, work the room, and just see who would be engaging and we had our recruitment system. It was one of the systems. We would go through the procedure and ask very in-depth questions like what pet they had and what flavour ice cream that they would prefer. And but at the same time, it's like we knew that we were in a unique clinic where we would be seeing a lot of people in a relatively condensed time frame. And that's what this group interview was like. It was this, people sitting around. Most people had never experienced a group interview before, but it gave us the opportunity to, again, okay, well, let's see who manages this and copes with these circumstances well. Because for our type of business, it was the personality of the individual, both practitioners and from a reception perspective, was probably more important than their technical skill or their history, their CV history. And so as a result, if we could find the people with the right personalities that was in harmony with our team values and our team philosophy and basically our business philosophy and business culture, that was where we could start sorting things out. And of course, you got your standard, your 3-month probation period to really work out whether things are a good fit or not. So in every... I can remember with our reception stuff, like we got to the point with our systems, we would record everything that they needed to do. So there's 113 videos on YouTube that clearly, the thing about systems, whether it's practitioner or reception staff, is that if they can really get the systems locked in, it then means you don't have to think about what to do next. Rather, you can think and be connected with your client, be connected with your patient, to really, in general terms, what path you're going to go down. And if they meet the required, technical or condition criteria, then the rest of your energy is actually spent connecting with them, not actually thinking about what's this script, because we all have scripts, we all have systems, we all have our regular patter. And what we did was just alert people to, it's almost like, step back from what you're doing in your role, and let's almost have an element of you being meta, sort of up in the top corner, looking down on what's going on, and to be able to not to get caught up on what you're saying, but rather we're setting up, I guess one of the analogies we have is like, if you go to play any sport, you play a game of tennis, you got rules. And the rules are you got to hit the ball over the net, it's got to land within the lines on the court, and whether you got Hawkeye or not, that's what the rules are. Everything within those rules, though, you can be as creative. Play left-handed, play right-handed, kick between, hit the ball between your legs, doesn't matter. Be creative, but you got to fit within these rules. And that's how we found and adopted that with our business systems. It's like, here are the rules. And basically, this is my sandbox. It's my business. You're going to play here. You can play. You just got to follow these rules. And so we had some very creative and unique individuals who would just excel. I mean, a lot of them who are very proud to report that with our staff and with our reception staff, like Emma, is been with us since 2002. So, obviously we have sold the business. That was in 2016. But Emma still works with the business. So the culture has continued on. So, and we have a really good track record of long-term employees. It wasn't a high turnover issue.
Yeah.
The big thing is, as you identified, you got to get them right at the beginning. The older cliche of get the right people on the bus. Well, we kind of got the bus sorted out, but you got to get the right people on the bus and in the respective roles.
I love that. And the distinction will flow into some of the FMT training that you do now and the workshops in just a moment, Teddo. But I'd love to just reflect on that point, and perhaps the ability for people to evolve so quickly in the model is the structured, systemized training and you setting the rules and being very clear about them, but giving the mentorship and guidance of people. I'd love to tap into what I've found is, and I've said this many a times, not just because you're here, that I've found your delivery of education to be the best teacher that I've ever come across in my sporting career, in my academic career, in my personal career. Your ability to distill down messages so that it's simple and that people follow through with it. More often than not, we get people say, I trained them in that system just the other week. And you're like, do you know what sort of training I went through?
Yeah, it's that is a good point.
I'd love you to shed some light on what wasn't necessarily easy. You put a lot of time and work into it. Perhaps you could shed some light on what it took to deliver those results.
Yeah, well, thank you for that acknowledgement, Ben. Certainly appreciate that. Right now, I would absolutely categorically say that the work and the effort in order to be able to distill things so that our training is as effective as possible is the primary action that Lil, my wife, both business partner and life partner, that's the tremendous talent that she brings. And the reason for that is we have been together for some 35 or 37 years. Oh, no, God, I've forgotten. Now I'm going to be in trouble.
Cut that out.
Yes, we have spent, no one knows me as well as Lil does. And certainly in the last probably 8 or 9, 10 years now, with our trainings, Lil works with me, and one of her roles is to review what I do, how I do, and how effective it is for the participants in the workshop. Well, she would also apply that role into our staff training of our clinics. And because she knows me so well, she knows how my mind thinks, and I can make the connections and leap ahead. And the most common theme that most common feedback Lil would give me is, you got to break it down. You've gone from this point A to point F, but you got to go through B, C, D, and E because you understand that, but not everyone else does. And it's so often the case where I would be thinking, but that's obvious. But this is the thing, as far as training goes, is you cannot assume that everyone has got the point you're making. And hopefully your memory from trainings that you've done with us is you will know that whenever I make a point or cover a point or looking for the group to make a point, I would then ask a question to get feedback as to whether that point has been made. Do you recall that?
Is this Alan Didak questions? The didactic.
Yes, the didactic approaches.
That is an AFL reference there, but anyway.
Yeah, so go Collingwood. But what was particularly pleasing to know that you did understand that because you responded to my question with another question.
Yeah.
So this is, yes, and that's a perfect example of, great, so you make a point, then you ask the question to gauge the feedback. And this is where listening becomes so important because you can say, does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Well, you don't know if that made sense to them or not. Okay, great. If that makes sense, can you give me an example of what type of client would this work for? And so sometimes as a trainer, it can feel very laborious, but this is where Lil's great strength is. she's able to go, you need to break this down because I can present an idea. And, it's one of those cases where you think of these ideas and they sound brilliant in your head. And as soon as you start talking out loud, you just wish you shut up. That's a bit of an extreme example, but that's what it's like. Is you have to break things down. And again, Ben, you'll know that we had a 3-month training roster. So then in 3 months, we would start the same topics again, because every practitioner, I just had a lunch on Friday with physio, a good friend, and he has 8 practitioners and staff. And he got to the lunch late because he was spending some extra time mentoring this individual who he had just spent the previous 3 weeks teaching them this stuff, and they completely ballsed it up. And why aren't they getting it? And it's part of being human, but it's also we, as students of life, we don't always absorb and integrate everything fully the first time that we hear it. In fact, it's probably pretty rare that happens.
Yes.
So repetition, that definitely comes into it. But you also got to be creative, because if you use the same script and the same patter every time, then everyone can get pretty bored with that as well. So, yes, it is repetition, but it's being creative with it. And you're right. I retired as a clinical practitioner in 2012. So the last 4 years, I would spend a substantial portion of time through the week reviewing what we've done, what's working, what's not working, what do we need to do to improve this. And we were also in the unique position where, because our services were not typically mainstream, and there were people waiting for us to slip up or do things that were that we could say, say bloody Jedynak. So we knew we had to be even more disciplined, because we were kind of standing up as the tall poppy, but we knew that as business owners. So we invested a lot of our time and energy in making sure that our team were as resourced as possible so that they could stand up, deliver high quality service that they would be proud of, as well as us being proud of as well. So
absolutely. I love the wisdom in that, and just to even highlight it again, one of the great sayings that I had and heard from a guy called Tony Robbins is repetition is the mother of skill. And the fact that you were talking about repetition really is how you train and upskill people. And that there was that 3-month cycle that was then repeated. More often than not, people will say, we did a session on that, and then there's no follow-up, there's no repetition in it. And that's, part of the reason why we went with the name Mastery, is because mastery is going back and mastering each time, refining. And like you said, it doesn't sink in on the first go. We've always got to get better. So I love that.
Let me just throw in another piece of wisdom here. That's I'm not the author of this, but it's something that's definitely stuck well with me, is that you don't fully understand something until someone else can teach someone else. See how wise it is? I'm going to have to review that. So you don't understand something until you can teach someone else, so they can teach someone else. And one of the things, it was one thing to have this 3-month cycle, but then we also had this roster where you'll recall, Ben, is like, okay, so if Ben, if you taught the initial consultation process, then in the next cycle, it would be one of the other practitioners that would teach it, and one of the other reception staff, if they were going to handle upset clients because of fee changes.
Sure.
Then, okay, well, they practice that, and then the next time out, so that everyone gets the opportunity to lead the training, but also to really own what they're teaching. And so that, really important. So it's the kind of different dimensions that you need to work and apply with that, particularly from a training perspective. But it's not easy. It's and not everyone's suited to it as well. And that's another reason where sometimes if you can get an external trainer in, even whether it's online or DVD, because we've done that as well. As had to invest in DVD courses and say, okay, we'll play those and we'll work through them. What do you think about this? How can we apply that? And, so there are many ways of being able to do that as well.
Incredible. I think if there's even one distilled thought, it's when you provide a structure and system of nurturing, upskilling and growth for practitioners and admin. I don't think it's any secret why you've had the level of loyalty over the years of team members on both fronts, and the level of growth and personal growth as well of everyone. You just see them go to a new level with that level of mentoring. And we're talking about creating great places to work, attracting quality talent, quality people. If you have some form of system and growth there for people to come into, I think you can attract and retain quality team members. It's extraordinary. So Ted, at the moment now you are doing FMT, foot mobilization or manual therapy techniques, where you show manual therapists how to master their skills, but also included in their patient care model as a way to attract and also retain/deliver for patients. Could you share a little bit more about what the training is, what you do, how you go about it, and perhaps who might benefit from it as well?
Really, I suppose the key people who would benefit from foot mobilization therapies trainings are those who have patients, who have clients who are seeking an alternative treatment option for MSK conditions of the lower limb. As podiatrists, we know that most of our MSK therapies are focused on orthotic therapy. But even with physios and chiros, they might have more advanced manual therapy skills. They don't know the foot like a podiatrist knows the foot. So it's those people who are dealing or are interested in lower limb conditions and lower limb management. The training is, it has just been reviewed and revamped again, and we have a foundational foot mobilization level 1 therapies is really about some of the fundamentals of the art and the science. So the art is the hands-on skills, and this is there is an art because there are subjective qualities, but we use the science background to help people understand what are we checking for, with joints, with end range, feel, with what are the presentations, the clinical conditions that this will work for, what are your objectives with the treatment. So there's good structure in looking at, if you've got a patient, they're complaining of this problem, it's almost like a checklist. You go through this, you go through that, and then you get to a point of, would foot mobilization or another form of manual therapy be of benefit to this patient? So it's one thing to learn the techniques, and I learned very early on. In fact, my mentor, Harvey, he taught me and taught the group that I was with a bunch of techniques. And it's like, well, when do you do this? And how do you know how long you do it for? And, what's the physiological rationale? And so you definitely need to have that all sorted out. Remember our first trip to the UK, and it was in 2010, and we then got asked to come back the following year. And one of the participants had been we ran one of the courses at university in Manchester. And a participant in the following year said, I decided to come down, but my lecturer, and he told me her name, said, this foot mobilization, it doesn't work. And I said, really? Geez, I didn't know. Why was that? Well, I tried it on my own foot once and it didn't work. And it's like, holy moly, who ever told you? It's just like, hopefully that seems obvious. It's like a dentist saying, use drilling and fillings doesn't work because I tried to drill my own tooth and it didn't. Of course it didn't bloody work. So, and then did you follow the protocol? Did you follow the assessment routine? So you get the assessment sorted out, you work out what it is your clinical objectives are, and then you've got a treatment plan. And it's a process over time, with the joint mobilization, with the release of connective tissues, with the neurological input, with the exercise. And then it's one of the big things that we'll be doing this year is, great, you've got a skill, you've got a new skill, you can be a little bit enthusiastic, even excited about delivering this to those people who maybe got better but not best with their heel pain or their metatarsalgias. How are you going to let them know? What's the thing that's going to help them be able to communicate their new services. So we have a whole new section on literally the promotional and educational elements that we haven't previously taught. So that's going to be a very exciting thing. So we'll be introducing that in our level 1 trainings, and then we have an advanced level 2 and 3 FMT intensive happening in Byron Bay in August, September, and that's going to be, we're really going to dive deeply into the business elements. So that'll be for people who use manual therapies and FMT and really looking to kind of make that a more significant part of their business structure.
Fantastic. I love the bridging that you have between, okay, you've been to the workshop, when reality kicks in on Monday, for instance, how are you going to continue to do this and promote so that people can come in and use the service? I think that's brilliant. More courses should have that bridge between, well done, you've got the skill. You just reminded me of one of Lil's expressions. It's literally the bridge to take them from where they are now to where we're going to be taking them to, and what are the steps along the way. So yes, there is a bridge, because you go back to your clinic and then you're back into the old environment and the old routine and the same questions. And I know a lot of my staff in the early days was, oh no, he's gone and done another workshop. Oh, grab it. Who knows what he's going to come up with this time? What crazy ideas. And so we go to significant lengths to support our staff to identify what's the one thing you're going to do on Monday. Like, what's the one thing that will move you closer? It's not about here, do everything. It's at a time, just, make sure you get over, those initial stages. So, I'm glad identify that. I love the distinction in the one thing. It's something I often use with everyone we're working with in whatever respect, is like, just what's one thing that you can do right now, do it well, and then build upon that. I think, again, that is a piece of gold in terms of your ability to mentor and keep people accountable to using what they've got, because they've invested their time, their money. You want to use it. Your patients deserve to reap the benefits of the new skills that you've learned as well. So that is terrific. So Teddo, if someone's listening in, they're interested, they want to do this, nothing else, they want to see you in action and how you go about mentoring, because that is worth the price of admission, I reckon, of seeing you mentor and refine, because if you could apply that to your own team, I reckon they'd exponentially improve. But if they want to come along, especially for FMT, some of those skills, learn how to do the skills, but then bridge them into applying them, and dare I say it, mastery. If you've already done it, do it again, because that's the whole idea, is to continually improve.
Yes.
What should they do from here?
If you're new to manual therapies, or if you think foot mobilization would be something worth exploring, I would actually say don't sign up for a workshop. What I would recommend you do is undertake a training course. Again, it's like just one little step. Maybe it's going to take a couple of hours of your own time over the course of a week or 10 days, and just test the waters. We have a new free online training course, and it's about developing your hands-on skills, and it's called Joint Assessments as Your New Superpower. And literally, if you're going to get into the manual therapies, you need to develop the ability and the skill, and because it's a skill, it means it's learnable. And we break it down in what you can do to build that skill. You can do that in the convenience and comfort of your own clinic. And the only investment is your time. Our website is footmobilisation.com/new superpower. And from there, you can get access to the course, and it will walk you through step by step. So I know you're going to get some great skills and training from it, but you also get the opportunity to test me out. It's my interview, if you like. And so you say, okay, well, yeah, maybe I could take this guy and benefit from his years of experience. But it's an opportunity to be able to check out my teaching style, and then if that proves beneficial, then enroll for the workshop. But at least do that way, and that way you're not committing to something that you may or may not be well suited. So probably be the best option.
Fantastic. And we'll include the link alongside this recording so that you can easily click versus Googling it, unless you want to Google it. But we'll put the link there so you can click it.
Great, thank you.
Oh, Teddo, it's been super to hang out again and learn more. I always get something more, even if it's a refined thought of distilling and breaking down the steps, starting with one simple thing to include to take the next step in whatever capacity that might be in business, having a mentor. But if there's one piece of advice, one thing maybe that you hope comes through this recording today for our listeners, one golden nugget, what would you say to the listener?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. So I've got 5 of them. No. One is you don't have to do it on your own. I think the value and the power of mentors and coaches is I wish I had done that sooner in my career. And also there are a lot of coaching and mentoring services around now compared to in my early stages of my career. But the key thing would be is if you're considering a mentor, like interview them, because if you're going to be paying for a service, you want to get a good return on your investment. Are they someone that you can relate to? Is it someone who's going to hold you accountable? Are they? What are the things that you need? And if I could just add in as well, you made a point there, Ben, about the one thing, one step, and then build on that. I would do that in reverse, and that is, start with the end in mind. Like, what is it you want to achieve? Okay, look, I want to have a successful business that has the indicators are this, this, and this. Okay, then work back. Okay, so if you need to have, for example, you want to see 50 new patients in your clinic, or your clinic sees 50 new patients per month. What needs to happen before that? Oh, well, I need to have a successful digital marketing system. Okay, what happens to that before that? Okay, well, I need to have this. And you just keep working back. What are the key things? Keep working back to where are you now? Then once you've done that, then you can start, okay, now you just work forward. Okay, well, the first step. Yeah. But the key question, that is, again, a mentor told me, say, what has to happen just before that? So if you can work your way backward, but that takes a lot of effort and thinking. And I think it was George Bernard Shaw, who said, thinking is such hard work that so few people do it. But if you've got a mentor that can keep you accountable and work you and help you achieve the goal that you, and you've got to be confident that they're going to get you, that they're the right mentor for you. That would be the one thing I would see. Seriously consider and explore and use mentors. You don't have to do it all on your own. And whatever problem you've got or you think you've got, someone else in the world has experienced it. I'm not so sure about these people who, driving around their convertibles and saying, yeah, I got this whole gig sorted out. I want to know someone who's been in the gutter. I want to know someone who can tell me, say, look, I feel your pain. I can help you with that because, I've been along that journey as well. Was that about 3 things that I read?
It was, but why not? Listeners have got their value, I tell you.
Yeah. Well, they should get. If they don't, they get a refund.
Oh, Teddo, it's
a Ben. He'll send you the refund.
It's been a real pleasure. Listeners, as always, send your feedback in. You can email us, ben@clinicmastery.com. Leave us a review on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast recording. And the show notes, as always, the things that we've referenced, the link that Teddo mentioned will be over on clinicmastery.com. You can head over there to get everything. Teddo, thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure.
And we will see you listeners on a next episode of the Grow My Clinic podcast.
This is the Grow My Clinic podcast by Clinic Mastery, where we help you deliver amazing client experiences to grow your clinic.